The next exercise for module 2 is saving the changes to the class list. Now, as usual, open the starter file. Okay, so we open our main Windows CS file. Now let's build and start to see how it looks like before we start editing the applications. So we have to build the solutions first, to generate exe file, and we can start it without any debugging if there's no error. Okay, let's try Kevin. Remember, we can edit Kevin by pressing the enter, okay, or double click. So let's say we change the last name and then click OK. So make sure it has been changed. Notice that this Save Changes button will be enabled. That's it. Now let's close our applications. But every time we start without debugging again, it will display the original data in the database, because any changes that we have applied here hasn't been saved into the backend database. So let's add some code into the Save Changes button. So once you click the Save Changes button, any changes that you have made will be saved into the original database. Again, view the task list to make it easier for you to jump from one exercise to another. So let's start from the very beginning, the 2A. Okay, so the task 2A, bring the system.data and system.data object namespace into scope. Okay, so these are all the namespaces that already exist. So some of the method you don't have to declare anymore. It's already included in inside these namespaces. Okay, so that's the purpose of this, adding these namespaces. Since you are going to update the data in the database, there is one very handy namespaces called system.data. And since you are going to modify the object in the data, there's another namespace that you have to add called system.data.objects. Okay, so the syntax in the C#, okay, to add those namespace is using. Okay, so we are going to do using system.data and using system.data.objects. Now let's take a look on the second to-do list. So you need to save the changes by calling the Save Changes method. So you already have by calling the Save Changes method of the school context object. Okay, so get ready for this one. And all you need to do, just use the current context, which is this dot school context dot save changes. After that, you have to toggle the Save Changes button back to gray, because once you click the Save Changes, it means the changes has been saved and there's nothing else to be saved. Okay. Okay, so you do the Save Changes, this school context save changes method, and change it back to false, so it will be gray out again. Now the next one, 3a, or if you want you can jump here. Okay, go to the end. And in this step, if an optimistic concurrency exceptions occur, then another user has changed the same students earlier. So then I'll write there changes with the new data. This is where you can use the try catch error handling. Okay, so all you need to do just write the command try. Okay, so you do this .school context.save changes. Disable the save button, okay, if it is enabled. Yeah, so you don't need this anymore. You do these two at the same time. Okay, just put it in the try catch error handling. Now the next one is to catch an exceptions. So if you catch an optimistic concurrency exceptions, okay, so your current context is the one that wins, okay, and save the changes. So it means if there is concurrency, optimistic concurrency exceptions mean whichever that do the changes last will be entitled to save the changes. Okay. Done. Now the last part for these sections. Three B. In 3A, this is 3A, this is 3B. Try catch error handling, and in the 3A is this one, okay, and 3B is just below it. Okay, now for the 3B we are going to catch an error as well. but this is catch an optimistic concurrency exceptions. So if somebody try to make changes almost at the same time, so if occurs, then another user has changed the same student earlier, overwrite the changes with the new data. Okay. Now this is if an update exceptions occur, then report the error to the user and roll back the instructions. If there's an exceptions on your database instead, when it's trying to update for whatever reason, your database is full, for example, or whatever kind of reason, it could be you put in the wrong informations and there's an error, or the string is too long and so on. So any kind of other exceptions, it will display the message box mentioning the error saving changes. Okay, the type of message box is the exceptions, inner exceptions message. And again, this school context, it will refresh and it just roll back the changes. Okay, so refresh mode. Okay, so it will just it just roll back and it doesn't do the save the changes. Yeah, it just refresh it with the previous data without saving changes. Now the last part of this method, if there is an this is the update exceptions from the database. So if there's any other exceptions, just show error saving changes, and again it will be rolled back. And that's it. Now let's debug, let's build and start without debugging. So build the solutions. And if it is successful, you just run without debugging. And that's it. Let's do modifications, let's say, for the Kevin Liu into Kevin Cook again. Click OK. Now this time, click Save the Changes. Notice that it goes back to gray. So if you double click Martin Weber, you can modify this. Or let's say George Lee has changed his name to George Michael, for example. Okay, save changes. Yep. Now once you close and try to start without debugging again, it should save the changes back into the original database. So when you open these applications again, it will retrieve the data from the database. Any changes has been reflected. Okay, so that's the last exercise for this module.